guys, it's Nicole and I am with Sharon again.
Hi.
We're here to talk to you about the real deal with the back end of real estate, I guess. We really always talk about, or a lot of times we show up with what we're talking about houses and the selling aspect and the sold and all that kind of thing. But really what gets us from that point A to point B, all the in-betweens, is kind of what we do. For the most part on the team, since I started, I've been a buyer's agent, so I've worked primarily with buyers, and Sharon right now is our transaction coordinator. So what does that really mean? What does that look like?
There's quite a few things that go along with that, but it's really just getting the clients to the closing table and making sure that we're communicating with the agents, the buyer's agent, even if it is one of our listings, making sure that all parties are aware of everything at all times and making sure everything can go as smoothly as possible.
Right. So finding the house can take however long. Then, the seller puts up the listing and then they kind of wait for a buyer to come through. We're doing a lot of work on the back end trying to get a buyer in. Now the buyer comes in, we negotiate, everything is together. And so what happens on the seller side, they're kind of like on the receiving end of what the buyer wants. And the buyer is more like on the offense of trying to, ask for inspections or get the approval. So there's a lot more work or legwork on the buyer side once we're under contract. So what happens with that, what we want to make sure when we're working with, either say we're on the transaction together, she's helping me keep all the timelines together, make sure all the paperwork's correct, we're compliant, the other agent's aware, the seller knows what we're doing, so everything keeps moving at the same time. So on the buyer side, it feels like you're just sitting around waiting. However, there's a lot of moving parts that they need to be involved in, as well as watching us, or I guess responding to what we're doing. So the number one thing, or I guess the first stop for me, the first point would be the inspections, where most of my deals, if they will fall apart. So what happens with inspections? On the seller side, we always recommend the sellers have either a pre-inspection, so knowing what's wrong with your house, or any issues that you're already aware of, making sure they're addressed up front, they're disclosed. Obviously, that's one legal thing, and also the buyer knows stepping in. So some sellers sometimes hold back information thinking that the buyer is going to run away or it's going to turn somebody off, and they don't know that the buyer, that's not something they're afraid of. Like if they have a roofer in the family or if they themselves work on AC units. So whatever it is, we just need to disclose and let the buyer make the decision so that it's always on the up and up. Because the biggest thing is when buyers are surprised or shocked by something, they tend to kind of fall away from that. Then on the flip side, I guess for buyers, is when you get that property inspection response or the report from the inspector, it's usually 28, 40 pages, very, very detailed. They will find things with the house. We need them to find things. There's no way somebody's lived in a house or the house is 15 years old and that house is like, dude, it's great, buy it. Like there's going to be things. We actually, even new construction, we actually need them to tell us what's wrong. So then we step back and we look at it with a clean perspective of what are the big ticket items. I like to call them big ticket items. That's how it was introduced to me, and I think that's the best way. So it's roof, plumbing, electric, AC is huge. Termite, obviously we want to do an inspection on that. Foundation is big here. Yeah. So all those things that walking into the house, if it was something you were buying, it would cost you a lot of money right off the bat, or it would be some kind of security or something that you would have to have done moving in. So that's not an expense you want to take on as a buyer. You could always elect to, like I said, if it's something that you're not afraid of or that you're okay dealing with. However, we need you to have that option. So we're not looking at, there's holes from the paintings that they had on the wall, or the carpet's dirty, or, the windows, even foggy windows aren't a big deal. So there are things that we want to look at to make sure, first of all, we can get you quotes on that, and we can tell you if it affects the condition of the house, anything that as far as the components of the home. So those are things that inspections are not things we want to freak out from on the buyer side. So always coming in with it almost, and we say removing the emotion, which is easier said than done. I freak out too. But we want to make sure we keep the emotion out of it and just look at it from a strictly safety issue and a big ticket item. Is it going to cost me a lot of money? Is it worth it for me stepping in? On the seller side, you want to be on the up and up, and you don't want to surprise them either right off the bat. So you put your stuff out there and you'll attract the right buyer based on total honesty and transparency. That is the word. Perfect.
Yeah, and just even doing just being transparent. I mean, there's ways to overcome it, and each side sometimes gets, like you mentioned earlier, really freaked out and doesn't think that things could be overcame to get to the closing table. When all actuality, when you have a really great realtor that you're communicating to, that they can help you get there. Yeah.
The people we know, the contractors we've had, the things we've seen that have been fixed, like everything can be salvaged or fixed. You just need to make sure that we're keeping level-headed and then just seeing it till the end before we just kind of freak out. So that's number one. I think inspections is the top.
Don't think you're going to get a perfect house by
Not
any
never.
means.
Even new construction, I mean, it just doesn't exist. Materials themselves aren't perfect that they're building the houses with, so it'd be very difficult to do that. So maybe expectations is 1A, inspections and then expectations.
Yeah.
So the second thing we run into is appraisals. Obviously, there's not a lot of control that we have as far as like the buyer side doesn't have any control over that, and the seller himself either doesn't have. Like, we can price it, and then we agree on a price, and then the inspector comes out there, the appraisal comes out there, and then now we have a number. But also with that, we've seen a lot of sellers just like, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not dropping my price, or the buyer freak out because it didn't appraise. There's also a lot of creative ways we could get around that. We had that, was it last week?
Recently, yeah, where we ended up just supplying some of the houses that we came across to actually create that number in the first place that helped develop that number. Well, let me rephrase that. Really, what we shared with the seller, and then they chose where they wanted to come in within that bracket of what was out there that has been sold. And so just being able to supply that to an appraiser, not so much trying to have them tweak their numbers, but really show that to them just in case maybe they overlooked something or something had hit the market that they didn't see, and that
just like
really
supporting
can help it.
facts, right? So you want an agent who will first go to bat and know the market enough to be able to tell the appraiser, yeah, I respect your opinion. However, this is another way to look at it, and if it's fair, because we don't get to sway the appraiser, and we don't have a lot of really contact with them. But if we can supply, and that's something we can do, and we did do, supply those documents, and they looked at the market again, and then we were able to salvage the deal because of that. So that's one thing. We can meet in the middle, so the buyers and sellers can, it depends on if just always having that open mind about going to the closing table. We always talk about it being a team, so there's a set kind of like buyer side with their agent, and then the seller side with their agent, looking at it as a team with the vendors, the appraisers, the inspector, everybody trying to get to that same end goal, which is getting you into the house. So as long as we keep that perspective, and then making sure we protect you from, I guess when you're open with your agent, knowing like, do you really want this house, then we make it happen as long as it protects you, and it's a win-win. We talk about that a lot with Keller Williams, making sure everybody gets a fair, nobody needs to win more than the other. That isn't fair on either side. So making sure that win-win happens with even the appraisals as far as that goes. The next one, and it makes a lot of people cringe. It's even hard to talk about sometimes with, especially if I'm helping family or friends, talking about financing. So all the different layers of the financing that come. So from the get-go, when I meet with a buyer, if they aren't pre-approved and they're kind of shying away from that approval, I have to spend a lot of time and really make them understand that having your ducks in a row with the financing is the complete change of the deal. There is no house unless you're financed, and there is no financing unless you're willing to sit there with a lender and talk about, disclose. I mean, it gets pretty, we just got the house refinanced. They get pretty in depth with your bank accounts, all the money you made, all the spending, all the credit cards, all your debt. So it is a lot. However, but you're buying a house. They're giving you a lot of money to buy a house. So I think it's only fair that you provide the information.
One of the biggest purchases, if not the biggest purchase of your life.
Right. And so they're only protecting their asset. And you would do the same. If somebody came up to you and they're asking you to borrow some money, if you didn't know them and they're like, dude, I'm good. I have a job. My cards are like, you're just going to be like, I don't know, show me some proof. So it's kind of what they're doing. So when you do get, I guess, asked from, and even the seller, I wouldn't, as a seller, if I ever sold the house, take an offer from somebody who wasn't pre-approved and then be like, oh, we'll check on that later. Like, no, I'd like to know you're pre-approved first and have the money kind of sitting there, and then we go through all the other obstacles. So financing is major, and it needs to be talked about. However, a lot of people, I guess there's a lot of misconception around it's just what your credit is, and if my credit's not right, then I can't ever buy a house, which is, again, you'd be surprised the loan options, the programs out there, the creative ways lenders can make it work. So we say always go local because they know the market here. So what is available to you and what can work for you in your situation. We talked about when purchasing things when you're...
So whenever you're a buyer, please don't go buy just anything. Like, make sure that you're talking with your lender. If you're going to start spending money and opening other lines of credit, make sure that you talk to your lender just to see if that's even something that you can do. Because who knows, you might be able to, but just don't do that, because that'll blow everything out of proportion, and you won't be able to buy the house.
You're basically on a spending freeze, right? They take a snapshot of your finances, and they need you to be that same borrower, co-borrower when you get to the closing table. So it's not like, even paying off some debt will skew your ratios again. It will change things where it doesn't mean you're not necessarily going to be able to purchase the house, but now they have to just look at it because they will run some credit again. And there's several stops and spots over the entire, because it's 30 to 40 days, most loan options, that they will look at your credit and make sure you're still the same thing. So any money that comes in has to be tracked. Anything paid off has to be tracked. So, you know, a lot of times people get really excited, and it's a really exciting time where now I'm gonna buy my furniture and I'm gonna get my new fridge because I measured for it, and we need a new car now that we're done with that. And so all of these things that are just like, do not do that. You gotta wait. You're pretty much on a spending freeze. It's gonna help you save some money. So then when you go in there, you can get everything. It's also better to wait until you're in the house. I found a lot of buyers who have this whole idea of what their furniture is gonna be set up like. And they get in the house and they live there for a couple weeks and they're like, yeah, it's just not, we don't spend a lot of time there, or the flow isn't the same, or the furniture, you know, so living in the house before you actually go and redo the whole thing too. So it's kind of nice. It kind of protects you on that side too. We've had not a lot, but some instances where, you know, we get 2 weeks before and they're just fed up with their job and all of a sudden I want to quit my job before I buy my house. So what that does, or they get laid off, that's something you can't help. But if that is, I mean, that's income stream is stopped, so there's not going to be a property there. So basically, once we take your application, get you under contract, nothing needs to change. You need to just sit tight until we get you to the closing, and then after that, I mean, the very next day you could quit your job if you want to, and you could buy all the refrigerators you want, anything you want at all, spend it all. However, you at least have a house to, you know, hang out in if you're jobless, and have a lot of refrigerators to hang around. Then the biggest one, which is important for us as the team that will help you get there, is going to be communication. So sometimes we don't have a lot of previous contacts. So some of the buyers, if you're coming from out of state, you don't really know us, you don't know much about us other than our team is one of the top teams and we could do a lot of real estate for you. However, communication is going to be key. If I don't know what's going on behind the curtains for you, if Sharon is trying to get something to the lender or the title company and she's not, you know, fully understanding what's going on at work for you or what's happening at home, there's no way. We only can help you with as much information as you provide, and that can help us protect you from the other side too. They're going to be sitting there and just wanting questions and asked, because I mean, imagine you're just trying to sell your house and it's like radio silence on the other end. You need to know what's going on. So me being able to provide that information to them. Also, the only way I can guide you or lead you through this process is if I know what I'm dealing with. So the more information, the more open you can be with me, with the transaction coordinator, with your lender, because you know, any move you want to make, any decision, any changes, you're going to have to communicate to that to them so that they can let you know if it's a go or if you need to hold on a second. And things that you might not even think might matter or make a big difference could totally derail.
Yeah, and just please don't keep it silent and don't think that someone's not going to find it out, because eventually the lender is going to start pulling additional information. Like Nicole said, there's certain pit stops along the way, and you think that you went and, you know, opened up a Best Buy card and all of a sudden that no one was going to find out the day before. Well, they could easily check your credit the day before or the day of closing and then just derail everything. And you definitely don't want that after that long drawn out process.
Yeah. So it really needs to become a team thing. The team effort has to happen, definitely. Even I have to work as a team. It's a team effort with the other agent. You know, I don't necessarily know them all the time. I have worked with several of them, but I need to be on open communication with them and knowing what's going on with both our buyers and our sellers. Because even if there's changes on the seller side, we don't want to be caught off guard either, because that might change how you feel about the process and the transaction. So communication is going to be the best, I guess, way for us to all stay on the same page with it. So top 5, you want to read them off? You want to repeat? Number 1,
inspections.
Number 2,
appraisals.
Number 3,
financing.
Number 4,
and then communication, and of course with job changes or financing changes.
Absolutely. Thanks again.